Thanks for staying with us. It's now time to stump the experts. This week's fan question comes from lifelong Mustang Joe Frank Atkinson.
Hi, I'm Joe Frank Atkinson, and my question of the day is, I was wondering what advantage do we have by allowing 4 teams in the 4 and 5A division qualify for the playoffs?
All right, Judge, what are your thoughts? What is the benefit of having 4 playoff teams?
Well, the benefit this year is Marble Falls gets a playoff spot. That's the benefit this year.
Hopefully.
Traditionally, I'm not a fan of 4 playoff teams out of the 4A district. I'm old school. I like maybe 1 and 2. I can go 1 and 2. But I think 4 teams out of the same district going to the playoffs cheapens the district champions position. You know, you play all year to win a district championship and turn around, there's 3 other guys in the playoffs with you. I know there's an advantage, you know, better schedule down the road in the playoffs. But old school says 1 or 2 teams in the playoff. But this year, I think we better have 4 because there's at least 4 teams in this mix, probably 5 or 6 in this mix for the playoff spots. And I wouldn't want to be fighting for 1 spot this year. So I'm going to be a temporary supporter of the 14 playoff.
Okay, all right, Lance.
Well, that sounds like the easy way out, but I hear you. And there's certain years, you know, yes. Now, of course, in the 3A, we're still only taking 3 in the 3A division. But when it comes to 4, I agree. I think it tends to water down the making of the playoffs. You know, it's you know, when I played again 100 years ago, it was a situation where you made the playoffs. That was an accomplishment. You know, now it's kind of like if you don't make the playoffs, that's a real indicator that you were terrible that year, and you don't want that. Okay, it becomes more of a negative thing, I think. Now, I understand the additional playing time, the additional exposure for the kids, the extra games, and the revenue that generates, and the economic development that goes on. I get all that. Okay, but let's go back to the core. This is football, okay? And the best should move on to play. And when they're all going, you're not really picking the best.
Okay. Billy, your thoughts?
Oh, I'm a big fan of just 2 people going. The 1 over the 2 is a pretty easy situation. You get a lot of situations in district where you have 2 teams that are excellent, and a tie, a flip, or just a simple loss does you in, and that 1 team doesn't go. Now, when I played, it was 1 team. And that was it. And we were in there with Goldthwaite and Burnet and Copper's Cove. It was a rough way to go. The other part of this is economic. UIL makes a percentage on playoff games. So part of the negative thing attacking this has been that when they expanded to 4, it put money in their pocket. And I can understand in 5A, I really don't in 4A. And the other part is the cost. As the further you go down the scale, the more that extra game costs. And not just for football. If it's just football, it wouldn't be bad. But when you spread it across all the other sports, for a 3A school, and especially a smaller 3A school, that's an enhanced amount of cost as far as that, especially in these times. So I am much in favor of the 2, realizing that we got in one time when we were 3 and 7, you know. It happens. It
can happen. And I've seen a situation, Bandera was in our district, and Llano and Bandera were fighting for that 3rd spot. Bandera comes up with it real close on the last game of the season. Bandera goes on to win the small school state championship. So once in a while, there's a sleeper in there that makes it in that 3rd spot. But I think the real core of this thing is the UIL has tried to fix a lot of the issues, whether financial or whatever, by changing the playoff system. And I think what it really needs to happen, they need to change the division system from 5 to 6, lower it, maybe increase the number of districts, but then bring 2 up from each district. Make the size of the schools closer together. That's a whole other topic, I understand. But I think rather than trying to fix it by expanding the playoffs, they need to attack it from another direction.
I agree with Lance on that one.
Well, and those are all valid points. And that brings up why I like the system the way that it is. I look at a district where Marble Falls is outnumbered almost 2 to 1 in enrollment. If the UIL is going to do that to Marble Falls, then I say I'm happy to take that 4th playoff spot, in particular because I know that our top 3 teams will play at least 2 rounds of the playoffs, possibly 3, possibly 4, and then of course you have the 3-time state champion in your district. So my whole point on that is that you're right, it is so watered down. I would agree with you on that. But when your 4th place team is almost as good as the District 26 champ.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a problem with that. I don't think it's watered down at all.
Well,
not as much.
I think that's a valid point, but again, I think you go back to the big school, small school issue, and you take 25-3A, if Lampasas and Burnet both make the playoffs, and I'm sure they will, Burnet's going to go in the playoffs as a small school. And yet they're probably close to the 8th biggest in the state, something like that. And so there's still some things. I agree, and I understand what you're saying. Again, I think I can almost argue this the other way, properly motivated. But just telling you what I think. but I will say that I agree. You'll find some sleepers along there that side by side with this other district are far better. But there is the luck of the draw, and that's part of the game as well too. And you have who you have in your district.
Well, Marble Falls is certainly, I'm motivated to argue for 4 teams this year because that's the way we get in. I'm not saying that we couldn't if it was 1 or 2 teams, but the percentages are we're going to get in because they're 4. And so I support it this year.
Well, gentlemen, again, as always, thank you for the conversation. It's always enlightening. We appreciate it. And we thank you for joining us as well. Remember that you're always welcome anytime here in the press box.